As a manager, your words can make or break your team's performance, and this is especially true when you are giving critical feedback. Now, I've learned this the hard way. So in this video, I'm going to answer 3 key questions. 1, why we often avoid giving critical feedback to our team, even though it's needed. Secondly, what should you say so you feel confident? And 3, what to do if the person doesn't agree with you. As an ex-corporate leader and now leadership coach, I've seen firsthand how good feedback can just transform teams and careers. I've also made my fair share of mistakes along the way, which is why I'm passionate about sharing these insights with you. I remember giving feedback once. From my perspective, it was a relatively straightforward piece of feedback. An element of their work just needed to be better. But even as I was saying it, I could see the response of surprise and discontent moving over their face. And I could feel my confidence beginning to wane as I realized I was about to walk slap bang into a very uncomfortable situation. For many managers, the fear that this might happen stops them even giving their feedback in the first place. They think it, but they don't say it. In fact, the phrase often used in management training is constructive criticism. And when we get to it in workshops, you can see everyone starting to feel more tense before we even get started. I mean, the phrase itself makes me feel quite nauseous. Nobody wants to be criticised. It can feel like a personal attack on our abilities or character. We worry that it could harm our reputation or our career prospects. And it can just feel emotionally uncomfortable and cause stress. So when, as a manager, we come to give critical feedback, we're already putting these negative feelings on the person. So we don't want to give it. We think they don't want to receive it. However, I can't understate how important it is for you to give criticism, but in a positive way, in order to make sure that the work and the teamwork in your team is at its best, to encourage people to learn and grow and get better at their jobs, and make sure that poor behaviours are nipped in the bud, because then you're avoiding problems stacking up in the future. So you need to be quick and constructive. And your mindset is key. You need to remember it's not an optional task. It is part of your roles and responsibilities as a manager and leader. So you've got to get out of your own head and have the conversation. Now, it helps if you know what that sounds like and what you're going to say. You know, that magic formula to make these feedback conversations less daunting. Well, I can't promise magic, but I can offer you something that does the job. I use the SBI Framework, and that's helped countless managers, including myself, navigate these tricky conversations by guiding us through the conversation so that we know what to say. And it also, I find, gives you confidence. Okay, let me take you through SBI. First up, we've got the situation. So this is all about setting the scene. You want to describe the specific context where the behaviour the person demonstrated occurred. You want to keep it objective and stick to the facts. What does that sound like? Last Tuesday, during our team meeting, see, that immediately sets the stage. It gives your feedback a clear and specific starting point. Next, we move to behaviour. This is where you describe what actually happened. And the key here is to focus on observable actions. Don't make assumptions or interpretations about why they may have done what they've done. You just state what you saw or heard. For instance, you interrupted Alex 3 times while she was presenting her project update. Now, that's specific and factual, but there's no judgment in there. The final piece of the framework is impact, and this is where you explain the effect of the behaviour. And it's important here to use I statements, so express how it affected you, the team, or the organisation. You need to own your feedback. For example, that could sound like, I felt concerned because it seemed to disrupt the flow of the meeting and it might have made Alex uncomfortable. Then open up the conversation by asking them their point of view. For example, what's your take on this? Or from your perspective, what happened? And this turns it into a conversation rather than a one-way criticism. So let's see how that all comes together. Here's the full example. Last Tuesday, during our team meeting, you interrupted Alex 3 times while she was presenting her project update. I felt concerned because it seemed to disrupt the flow of the meeting and might have made Alex feel uncomfortable. What's your take on this? See how clear and constructive that is? And it opens the door now for a productive conversation. And the benefit of this is that you can now understand what the other person thinks about it. Were they aware or unaware of what they have done? It gives you an opportunity to explore. Is it a skills issue that they need to learn how to do something? Or is it an issue of attitude and they need to change their behavior? Now, I've found 9 times out of 10 when I've used this framework, it has been received constructively, and the person themselves has been key in developing their own plan of action and acknowledging what needed to change and indeed committing to do it. But what about the other one? So what happens when, despite your best efforts, using the SBI framework, your team member is having none of it and doesn't agree with your feedback? Now, this can be such a challenging situation, but there are several actions you can take that will definitely improve the result. First, stay calm and listen. You have to resist the urge to become defensive. Instead, listen carefully to the person's point of view. Keep your body language open. You know, there might be information you're not aware of, so ask more questions to understand more. Now, a good question to use is, can you help me understand why you see it differently? Then, when they've finished, summarize what you heard. This helps the person feel heard. It allows you to highlight points where you may be agreeing, there may be common ground. And this can be the starting point for any further discussion. But don't be afraid to set your expectations clearly. So, for example, in our example, say they disagreed, you could say, moving forward, I expect all team members to listen attentively during the other team members' presentations without interrupting. If you have any questions or comments, just note them down and we'll address them at the end. And then explain the reasoning. This approach ensures everyone has a chance to share their ideas fully, promotes respect in the team, and helps keep our meetings more efficient. You can also offer support if needed. For example, look, I understand you were struggling to hold back your thoughts. How about we explore some ways to make this easier for you? What do you think? It's good to have a timeline for the improvements. Finally, I would document the conversation, which you can either share if it's serious enough or just keep for reference, because this may give you good examples for quarterly, half-year or annual reviews, because it's so easy to forget that you had this conversation, and this allows you to see patterns over time. Remember, the goal here isn't to win the argument, but to work towards improved performance and a better working relationship. Sometimes you may need to agree to disagree in the short term, but then just continue to monitor the situation, and you can always revisit it if necessary. Your team will respect you for having the courage to share the difficult messages, especially if it helps them achieve their own goals more successfully. Now, I mentioned earlier that one-on-ones are a good point to both have these conversations and definitely return to review them. And in this video here, I share what makes a good one-on-one and how to make the sessions work for both you and your team. So I'd recommend checking out that video next. Getting your one-on-ones right builds trust, and what that does is make having these conversations even easier. Either way, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.